we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I am Ann Northrup, and we're here on World AIDS Day. We should mention that.
We will definitely talk about that, and we're also going to mourn a bunch of losses and the other losses in the community of Broadway giant Stephen Sondheim, Phil Saviano, who was a survivor of priestly abuse and became a big advocate, graphic artist and activist Maria Perez, and Sacramento gay pioneer Reverend Jerry Sloan.
Some amazing stories among all of them. We'll also talk about a breakthrough in electoral politics for non-binary people in Atlanta, Georgia.
In New Jersey, a gay nurse and activist, Damian, I think it's Dymka actually, 29, was the victim of a vehicular homicide by an off-duty cop who then tried to cover it up in a horrible way.
Unbelievable. And a bisexual teacher in Michigan resigned when he was told to take down a pride flag from his classroom.
We have transgender progress in the National Football League and in the Miss USA pageant.
Yeah, sort of. Progress in Chile, Holland, Bangladesh, Germany, Botswana, and Sweden. But trouble in Hungary, Honduras, Australia, and Russia. Are you taking notes?
Yeah. You can record the show and listen slowly. And I'm going to review Steven Spielberg's new film version of West Side Story with a screenplay by Tony Kushner and executive produced by Rita Moreno, who also stars.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. All right. Well, first, before we get into the news, we really want to thank all of you who've responded so generously to our appeal last week in our show note for support of Gay USA. We put out this formal appeal once a year, although you can support us anytime. By going to our website, gayusatv.org. But we are particularly touched by the kind words and notes from everybody and your substantial support. And I just want to say also that some of you have donated anonymously, which is absolutely fine. It's frustrating to me because I want to know everybody who donates. But you are absolutely free to donate anonymously, and that is a feature on the website. And if you do that, even we don't know. So
it's very gratifying. We don't know most of you personally. We've met some of you. We communicate with some of you on a regular basis when you send us notes and you send us news, and we've
come to know you that way. Yes,
we appreciate all that as well, because we're all in this together, and we just thank you so much.
Yes, please.
So World AIDS Day. The White House this morning on World AIDS Day got a big red ribbon on it, and Dr. Jill Biden standing out there, and the president issued a proclamation for World AIDS Day.
Is that Jill?
I believe it is Jill, isn't it?
Okay. It doesn't really look like her.
Dr. Jill Biden. Yeah.
Might be. Anyway, it's someone, and look, even Trump put up the red ribbon. I'm not giving him credit. I'm just saying it's become quite the routine thing. Which is, again, gratifying and annoying because they talk the talk, but do they walk the walk? Biden's proclamation for World AIDS Day included LGBTQ plus people, which Trump never did. And promised more money and a worldwide effort and the elimination of guilt or stigma. Now, we've been hearing this for 40 years.
Well, I mean, Biden in the proclamation says we're going to end HIV globally. You're not going to end it globally if you hold on to all these pharmaceutical patents. South Africa wants to produce its own drugs, and you won't let them because of intellectual property. And this is, I'm bringing this up because this is driving this new Omicron pandemic that we're about to be subsumed by, and we now have a case in the United States. In South Africa, they believe that the incubators of variants are often HIV positive people who are not vaccinated, who don't have the HIV treatments, and who don't and aren't vaccinated. And we just, and a lot of it, they have enough vaccines, by the way, in South Africa. I was surprised to read that. They have enough physical vaccines but for COVID, but they don't have a delivery system, and we're not on top of it. And when we're not on top of it, we allow the thing to get out of control. And I'm sick of the way South Africa is being stigmatized because they're the ones who check for variants when we're not.
Right. So they're being blamed for the origin of the Omicron variant, but the fact is it's just that they found it because they looked for it. Just as gay men were blamed for HIV, still are, because that's where it was first seen, not because that's where it started. And this whole thing about drug availability, again, we've been fighting this in the HIV field almost since the workable drugs were found and released in 1996, but probably much longer than that in the whole field of drug availability. But the World Health Organization rules say that poor countries can have access to generic versions of major pharmaceutical company drugs. Sorry, the curtain just fell off my window. Because they are poor and cannot afford the prices of these pharmaceutical companies. But the United States has routinely and in trade agreements for years insisted on the patents of the pharmaceutical companies being honored and the prices being held at high levels. And this is just murder and criminal.
It's one thing that brings the Republican and Democratic Party together, protecting those patents.
Because the pharmaceutical companies are such high donors to politicians. And so their patents are upheld. Poor countries can't get access to generic versions of the drugs, and thus it goes.
But that is shooting ourselves, not just in the foot, but in the head, because it is going to lead to our destruction worldwide with COVID, because these people who aren't getting proper treatment are going to be the incubators of not just Omicron, but new variants.
Yes.
All right. And then you had a federal judge this week appointed by Trump saying, no, you can't mandate that healthcare workers have to be vaccinated. Healthcare workers. It's a death cult, the Republican Party.
But you can evidently mandate that women cannot have control over their own bodies. Only Republicans can have control over their own bodies.
It was so depressing listening to the arguments in the Supreme Court today. I love what Justice Sotomayor...
About the abortion, the Mississippi abortion law. I
love that Justice Sotomayor, asked if the court will survive the stench of overturning Roe. Well, Supreme Court's had a stench since they gave the presidency to George Bush, when they gutted the Voting Rights Act, and when they said, no, D.C. can't have gun control laws. So the court's been on a slide for a long time and is losing its legitimacy. And folks, this can be fixed by Congress by amending the Judiciary Act. It is in the power of the Congress. You don't have to change the Constitution. You just have to, go in and, rejigger it and rebalance it so that it might have some respect.
Well, it's in the power of the Congress to pass a reproductive rights law, too, that they have no appetite for doing.
Well, I saw in the arguments they were saying, well, we're not trying to ban it for everybody. We're just going to let the people decide in the states if they're going to subjugate their women. And
Well, several points. One, if you think it's such anathema, if you think abortion is so disgusting and filthy, why aren't you trying to ban it for everybody? What about your hypocrisy there?
So they will uphold this 15-week law in Mississippi, and then the other states will say, how about 10 weeks? How about 6 weeks? How about, a zygote?
Exactly. But they're also exploiting us in their arguments because they're saying, well, the court overturned Bowers v. Hardwick to do Lawrence v. Texas 17 years later to legalize sodomy. So why can't we reverse Roe 50 years later? Or they overturn laws to pass Obergefell.
And the answer is that was in the direction of justice, and this is in the direction of suppression.
And they also tried to make the argument of, well, why should the Supreme Court decide? Why shouldn't the people decide? Because women have an inherent right to control their own bodies. And that's what the Supreme Court was deciding in Roe v. Wade. And you don't suddenly take that away.
Because we do have a constitution. That's why. I mean, Brown v. Board of Education wasn't very popular in the South, was it?
It wasn't enforced for some years after it was decided. It took quite a while. I'm really sorry about this. I'm going to button up my shirt to try to minimize the sun spot on my chest.
Okay.
Anyway.
Well, in other political news, we keep telling you, how Kyrsten Sinema is holding up so much, including the Equality Act, because she won't get rid of the filibuster in the Senate, among others. So she's not the only one. But in Arizona, she is set to lose a Democratic primary. She is losing to every Democratic possible nominee by more than a 2-to-1 margin.
Yeah, unfortunately, she doesn't come up for re-election until 2024. So we've got a long time to wait for that to happen.
Apparently, she doesn't care. Being in the Senate is a network opportunity. She's going to leave and make a lot of money, but she's disgraceful.
She might even resign before 24 to capitalize on those opportunities.
Let's cash in.
Yeah, but luckily, we have other people rising who are of better values. In Atlanta, Georgia, we have the results of a runoff race for the city council finally, and Liliana Bakhtiari, a non-binary Muslim, has been elected to the City Council of Atlanta, the first LGBTQ Muslim, the only major city to elect a non-binary person to their city council. So this is a great victory, as portrayed by the Victory Fund there, which had endorsed them. And congratulations, Liliana.
And we have a bit of a hero in Michigan at the Three Rivers Middle School, a bisexual phys ed teacher, Russell Ball, 43. There he is with his wife, I believe. He quit after being ordered to remove a pride flag from his classroom. He's a 10-year veteran of the school system. He said, by removing it, I feel like I'm being told I'm invalidated, that I don't belong. And that's not a message I want to send to myself or to any of my students, because regardless of sexual orientation and sexual identity, you belong, you matter. You always have a place in this world. Now, a dozen teachers had pride flags. Former students are now planning a protest on his behalf during the next school board meeting on December 6th. He's with his wife, Andrea, there. He's going to be a stay-at-home dad now for his 5 kids. The district superintendent says it's an ongoing situation and we want a safe environment for all of our students. Well,
and how about our teachers? And how about the students who are LGBTQ? How does having pride flags make straight students unsafe? That's insane. That's the argument these days, and it is just crazy. This all evidently stemmed from one parental complaint, and then all the schools were told to take down their pride flags. So we'll see what happens at the board.
Did you see what happened at Duke Ellington High School of the Arts in D.C.? They had a forum with Dave Chappelle last week where they were supposed to be able to ask questions with him about their concerns about his anti-LGBTQ, quote-unquote, comedy act. 580 attended, but as one of them said, he asked for our opinions, and then when we gave them, he just shut us down. He was really rude to us. Students who got the renaming of the school's theater for him postponed are being threatened now and harassed online. While students couldn't film Chappelle with their phones during the meeting, he had a film crew in filming him, which will be properly edited.
He did not tell anyone he was bringing the film crew, and the parents were not told that he was coming, let alone bringing a film crew. We got a note from a viewer who was angry at us for going after Chappelle, and I just think we're not. We appreciate what Chappelle's done for the school. That's all great, but then why is he going in and being mean to the students? And
I appreciate a lot of his anti-racism work, which can be very pointed and very good. But he's got a bad angle on this, and he's not letting go of it.
There's another school story from McConnellsburg, Pennsylvania, where the Fulton County, Pennsylvania commissioners, by a 2-to-1 vote, denied $3,000 in funding request to the local library because they are hosting an LGBTQ support group. One of the commissioners who voted against the funding called the LGBTQ group a hate group. So the community got so mad about this, they put up a GoFundMe community fundraiser and have raised so far $40,000 for the local library to make up for the $3,000 that the commissioners voted down.
Hear, hear.
Yes.
A terrible story in New Jersey. An off-duty cop named Louis Santiago has been charged with reckless vehicular homicide and the death of a pedestrian, Damian Dymka, that's him, Damien, a 29-year-old nurse on November 1st. Santiago absconded with the body. We're not even sure if he was even dead yet. Just picked him up and got him out of there. And Santiago, his passenger, and his mother are being charged with crimes, including endangering the victim. He might have lived, we don't know. A cover-up. Damien was a gay activist who, with his then husband, got Milford, New Jersey, to raise the rainbow flag in 2017.
Yeah, he was a nurse. He was walking along the Garden State Parkway, not clear why, when the cop veered off the regular road and ran into him in the middle of the night, took the body to his mother's house. And then was it his mother or his father who convinced him to take the body back to where he found it, replace the body? They called 911, and the cops came and arrested him and dealt with the death. Terrible, terrible story.
All right, we're going to talk about some of the people we lost this week. You almost surely heard about the death of Stephen Sondheim at 91 suddenly. And, this has had a tremendous effect on people. Even though he was 91, he was at work on a new show that we may never see. But the work he left us, from the lyrics of West Side Story in 1957 when he was 26, to the most memorable musicals in history. He did the lyrics for Gypsy, Words and Music for Folly, Sweeney Todd, A Little Night Music, Merrily We Roll Along, Company, which is on Broadway now, with Patti LuPone. And by the way, we'll link to an interview he did on CBS Sunday Morning, Patti and Stephen in a conversation. He was an out gay man who found love late in life at 61 with a guy named Peter Jones, and then didn't get married until 4 years ago to Jeff Romley. We have a picture of the two of them. Jeff was himself an actor and a producer. But the AP didn't even make mention that he had a husband, which was kind of awful. What else can we say? He was deeply mourned in the theater and gay worlds. People flocked to Marie's Crisis in the Village piano bar to sing his songs for 4 hours. He was just very, very beloved. When the New York City Gay Men's Chorus created a Sondheim medley, Sondheim himself actually attended the auditions for the soloists. And my friend Aurelio Font had to sing in front of him. He says, I never get nervous. I was nervous then, but I got a lovely affirmation from him and a note from him. He signed the music and everything. So we have his music forever. Go on YouTube and Google Sondheim. You can hear it. It's just tremendous.
Well, he really did change musical theater with a whole new, innovative, progressive approach. I remember going to see Follies when it first opened in the '70s, and let's not forget Last of Sheila, the movie he wrote that was a whole puzzle piece because he loved puzzles. But he, his showing up at the auditions, he showed up at everything, and including the recent opening of the new version of Company and saw the new West Side Story. He just showed up and seemed to be very down to earth and very friendly to everybody, and did not distance himself from the world.
Tremendous loss. We also lost Adolfo this week, the famous dress designer, famous for dressing Nancy Reagan.
Yeah.
And the ladies who lunch, as Stephen Sondheim would say. He was dead at 98. His companion of 40 years, Edward Perry, died back in 1994 at the age of 84. He also dressed the Duchess of Windsor. He hung out with quite a crowd.
Well, it made me wonder whether he was one of the ones in the Reagan crowd who had talked Ronnie into opposing the anti-gay bill in California. I have no evidence of that, but I know there were some who did.
We don't
know.
No. Another grim crime story. I want to wait a minute. No, I want to get to the other obits here.
No, let's go to Phil Saviano. There was a hero.
Yes.
Phil Saviano died at 69. He was the main person who blew the whistle on clergy sexual abuse of children.
In Massachusetts.
But really starting the whole movement around the world. He had been abused when he was 11 by his priest, his parish priest in Massachusetts. And he didn't tell anybody about it. And then eventually, like 30 years later, he contracted HIV. And it was early on, and he thought, I'm going to die of this. Let me quote this, in fact.
He said, it gave me the courage to do something I might not have done.
Being an AIDS patient freed me up to have the courage. I was dying. I was broke. My reputation in the eyes of many was already in tatters because I was a gay man with AIDS, and we were pariahs back then. I saw this as a way to have an impact, to do some good on my way out. And what he did was start relentlessly pursuing these abusive priests, doing research, putting together all the documents, and eventually going to the Boston Globe and presenting all this evidence. And at first they sort of ignored him, but then they decided they really wanted to pursue the story. And so they called him up and brought him back in, and he talked to them for 4 hours, presented all this documentation, and thus the movie Spotlight and the complete revelation of how widespread this abuse was.
Where he was played by Neil Huff. I mean, he documented there were more than 1,000 children abused in the Boston diocese by 250 priests, mostly under the anti-gay Cardinal Bernard Law, who covered it up, costing the diocese $100 million in lawsuits at least. So he brought this to light, and he was finally believed.
From the New York Times obituary, a relentless and determined activist, he documented the actions of dozens of pedophile priests in the Boston area, coaxed other survivors to go public with their stories, helped educate the Spotlight team about how priests had groomed their victims for eventual seduction, and how the church had knowingly shuttled rogue priests to different parishes where they often went on to abuse other children. He also worked with the filmmakers of the movie Spotlight to add angles like the grooming by the priests. They had not gone into that until they talked to him.
And he did manage to have a professional life as well. He worked very closely with Judy Collins, the wonderful singer.
But what a hero. And,
yes.
All these stories are always about grassroots individual people who just decide they're going for justice. And nothing could be more admirable. People get medals and accolades all the time, but the real heroes are the ones like Phil Saviano, who really persist and stay with it until they get the right thing done.
And then there's Maria Caridad Perez. She has died. She was the art director and photographer extraordinaire at Outweek magazine back in 1989, in some of the worst years of the AIDS pandemic. Andrew Miller of ACT UP and Queer Nation said, "Gay and Latina were inextricably entwined for Maria, and she shared her culture willingly and lovingly." And she said of Outweek, the news magazine, "I am proud of us. We are a part of history. Good people who came together for a good cause."
And one more hero from Sacramento, California, Reverend Jerry Sloan. He came out in 1960 and immediately became a civil rights activist. He marched, he fasted for 14 days on the steps of the Fort Worth, Texas Federal Building in 1977 for justice for gay people. And in 1984, he was somehow in a debate with Jerry Falwell, probably because they were both ministers, and accused Falwell of saying derogatory things about the Metropolitan Community Church. And Falwell said, "No, I didn't. No, I didn't. If you can prove that, I'll pay you $5,000. Well, Jerry Sloan had the tape. He had written away when he saw Jerry Falwell on TV saying this. He had done the thing they advertised. He'd written to the station to ask for the tape. And so when Falwell denied it, Jerry Sloan had the tape, and they went to court, and Sloan got $8,900 out of this, probably legal fees too.
And donated the money to found the Lambda Community Center in Sacramento.
A lifelong activist and hero who, again, took the initiative to do what needed to be done and spoke truth to the bigoted.
And I want to honor, not a gay loss, but Lee Elder, the golfer. He's known as the first black player to play in the Masters in 1975. They would not invite black people before that. 1975. He couldn't even play on the PGA Tour. They didn't get rid of their whites only clause until 61. He finally qualified in 1967, had a great record. But the abuses that he suffered, even when he qualified, no, change your shoes in the parking lot. You're not allowed in the clubhouse at some of these places. You're not allowed to stay at the local hotels. This is in the late 60s and early 70s. Outrageous. So he suffered a lot, but he was a very terrific guy and a very accomplished person and player. 87.
Absolutely. All right. Moving on to other news, but we'll make it a sports segue. The logo for the next Super Bowl, Super Bowl 56, has been created by a trans artist, Maureen Raish. There she is with the football with the logo on it. She has done lots of major sports team logos, and she is the creator of this one for the NFL.
It's the one in Los Angeles, the 56th Super Bowl. She came out publicly. She'd been out to her family publicly during Trans Awareness Week, and she says, "This is my personal rebranding." She acknowledged the design, by the way, was a team effort. She also, again, we'll see all that work. And she's also known for her impressions of Christopher Walken and Harrison Ford. She's got quite a list of accomplishments.
I'd like to see those.
Another grim crime story, by the way. Did you read about this one in Auburndale, Florida? A 14-year-old stabbed his 18-year-old boyfriend to death during an altercation. Zachary Jordan Lee was found dead on the street on November 27th. The 14-year-old, Jerome Zacares, had been with Lee for 9 months, and after a fatal, after the fatal attack, he called 911, but when he talked to the police, he said he couldn't even remember what happened.
Well, evidently Zachary slammed a car door on Jerome's finger, Jerome became enraged. I'd be enraged by that too.
Yes.
Ran home, got a knife, came back, stabbed Zachary, ran home again to call 911, ran back to try to help save Zachary, but it was too late, and was just devastated by what he had done.
All right.
Watch out for uncontrollable rage. Well, I am not enraged by what happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma this weekend, where they held the Miss USA pageant. But a trans woman, Cataluna Enriquez, born in the Philippines but living now in LA and Las Vegas, was Miss Nevada, the official contestant from Nevada for the Miss USA pageant.
There she is.
She did not win. She did not make the finals or the semifinals, but she was up there on stage with everybody else. She's a healthcare administrator, and the fact that Nevada chose her as their representative to the Miss USA pageant was quite good. Spain once had a trans contestant win the whole Miss Spain contest and go to the Miss Universe pageant. We haven't gotten that far yet, but at least we've had a state winner.
Some sad news from New York. Legendary drag king performer Murray Hill lost everything in a 4-alarm fire on Thursday, which was also his 50th birthday. This was his apartment of 20 years. A GoFundMe campaign raised more than $160,000 for him. It was a terrible fire. 6 firefighters were injured. There were 140 on the scene. Murray was grateful for their heroic efforts, but the building has become uninhabitable.
Well, sure. Murray, luckily, was out of town when the fire happened.
But he lost everything, so much.
Everything, including decades worth of mementos and documentation of his act. He will be doing his annual act at Joe's Pub this month, A Murray Little Christmas. So go see that and support Murray.
Okay. International news?
No, just a couple more things. In Hastings, Minnesota, an angry anti-vax mother has outed the school board chair's trans daughter.
Awful.
8 years old, the daughter, not the either of the women. The daughter then, of course, was been bullied by her peers, and the family is moving out of town because this right-wing anti-vax mother was angry at a vaccine mandate and outed the school board chair's daughter.
Things are becoming more and more physically violent and just violent. That is doing violence to people. What the Supreme Court is doing to women is violence. Things are getting out of hand.
Exactly.
Or have gotten out of hand a long time ago, I guess.
All right, now to international news.
Well, in Sweden, they have the first woman prime minister, Magdalena Andersson, and she named the first trans minister, Lina Axelsson Killblom, as the schools minister for Sweden.
Nice. And in Germany, the new government there is promising trans self-determination, no longer requiring surgery or doctor's notes to change your birth certificate gender. They will also require that health insurance cover transition needs, outlawing intersex surgeries and conversion therapy, and they will allow unrestricted blood donations from all people.
And although they do protect LGBTQ civil rights in Germany, this new government under Olaf Scholz, this is the new social democrat-led government after Merkel, putting LGBTQ protections in the Constitution and strengthen the conversion therapy ban, and they're going to review their asylum procedures for LGBTQ refugees.
In Chile, a trans woman, Amelia Schneider, who's a big student activist, has been elected to the Chamber of Deputies, the lower house of the Chile parliament. So that's considered a great breakthrough.
Well, In Chile, a Senate committee blocked the planned final vote on marriage equality this week, sent it to a conference committee that meets on Monday. So fingers crossed, the presidential election is December 19th there, and the leading candidate is against it. But the current president, who's for it, is going to be in office until March 11th, and will sign it if it gets to him.
And in Thailand, after the court rejection of same-sex marriage rights, there was a major street demonstration and festival for same-sex marriage. There were performers, petitions signing, a fashion show, a wedding photo booth. It looks like quite a party there.
57% of people there support same-sex marriage, but it's it seems like you've got to get 90% support before you can get anything these days. In
India, the marriage cases there have been delayed until February.
Right.
Keep looking at that.
In Botswana, an appeals court unanimously upheld the 2019 ruling decriminalizing gay sex. It had been punishable by up to 7 years in prison. But the government went back to court and saying, wait a minute, our people don't support this. You can't do this. But the High Court said yes.
The court said there is no public interest in criminalizing same-sex sex. It serves only to stigmatize people, and criminalization is not in the nature of Botswana.
Tell me about these lesbians in Taiwan's Singapore couple that can register.
Well, Taiwan legalized same-sex marriage, but when they did so, they said Taiwanese can only marry someone from another country if the other country has legal same-sex marriage. So this has been an ongoing battle. And a couple of same-sex couples, country discordant, have gone to court and won, but only as their individual cases, not for a wider population. But now a lesbian couple, one Taiwanese and one from Singapore, have won a lawsuit, are being allowed to register their marriage, and evidently this may have wider application for other country discordant same-sex couples married.
And I apologize to Rich. I went out of turn because we have a story about the Dutch government apologizing for the discredited and scrapped law that required trans people to undergo surgery and sterilization in order to change their gender on a birth certificate. The Dutch Minister for Education, Culture and Science said that for decades people underwent medical procedures that they did not want at all. The trans network Nederlander says the government's compensation of 5,000 euros to those affected by this law is too low.
Well, they said that the ban or the rule structurally damaged and disadvantaged trans and intersex people for 30 years. Yeah. So 5,000 euros is a small recompense for that.
The Prime Minister of Australia, Scott Morrison, who is himself a fundamentalist Christian, is making things worse. He's introduced a bill to protect religious people from what he calls cancel culture. Now, keep in mind that the religious right is the biggest practitioner of cancel culture in history, burning Jews, slaughtering Native Americans, genocide against Aboriginal people. But Morrison's bill would allow Catholic schools to fire LGBTQ people and everybody to express derogatory comments about us in the workplace. Like a nurse telling a patient with HIV, you know, this is God's punishment. That would be okay under this law because that's her Christian belief.
Well, the irony is that he's doing this because he is offended that there were derogatory things said about Margaret Court when she was honored by the Tennis Federation. And Israel Folau, the rugby player, both of whom faced some, opprobrium from progressives. And so now he's saying it's okay for religious people to do the same thing to us.
In Russia, they're investigating Netflix for gay propaganda. It goes on and on over there.
In Costa Rica, we have found out that Focus on the Family and Exodus Global Alliance are trying conversion therapy on reporters who have gone to them to pose as gay. Now, Exodus Global Alliance is the offshoot of Exodus International, which went out of business in the United States for trying to do conversion therapy. So, as always, these religious right-wing organizations are taking their act on the road and trying to spread their hate everywhere. I mean, this Botswana stuff and other laws all over Africa, including the proposed Ghana law, which may be passed at any minute, are all the products of right-wing evangelicals in the United States who are working internationally because we have succeeded in suppressing some of their actions here. The Russia stuff is the brainchild of American, Brian Brown. What is his name? Is it Brian?
Brian Brown.
Yeah.
Now, Honduras has its first out gay legislator, Victor Brajeda, in Congress, but the husband of the likely incoming president, a former president himself, says their party does not support marriage equality, despite the 2017 order of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights to institute it. This woman, Castro, Xiomara Castro, is the left candidate and had been expected to legalize abortion and same-sex marriage. And she's the wife of Manuel Zelaya, who's the president who was deposed in a coup in 2009.
Well, I'm hoping that when she's been all over the place with this, and I'm hoping
I hope you get a hold of her.
I hope I get over my cold.
I
hope she, once she takes the reins of power, that she will decide to adhere to the order to legalize same-sex marriage.
Well, in Hungary, the parliament has cleared the way for the Orban government, vicious anti-LGBTQ referendum in 2022. Basically a Russian-style anti-gay propaganda law, barring mention of us in schools and in the media where children could see it. This is stepping up Hungary's conflict with the European Union, which happens to stand for LGBTQ rights. But 3 television stations and some magazines are now doing awareness campaigns on LGBTQ families in defiance, because there's already a law against this there. They want to put it in the Constitution and get everybody to vote on it to whip up support in the next election.
Well, exactly. Orban is running for re-election, and this is a device to get his voters to the polls in the George Bush style of putting bars on same-sex marriage on the ballot to get his voters to the polls in 2004. In Bangladesh, the small town of Trulanchampur, I've totally mangled that, has elected a Hijra trans woman, right, Nairul Islam Ritu, as the mayor. I just referred to them as a woman. Hijra is actually regarded as third gender, so I apologize for that. Ritu is very popular in town as a native, then left because suffered a lot of abuse as a Hijra, came back and has operated as a philanthropist, building mosques, contributing to Hindu temples, and so got 2/3 of the votes for mayor.
Okay.
In Toronto, they've just announced they're going to hold the first in-person Global Black Pride in 2022 in July. God willing, and the creek don't rise with this.
And the Omicron don't rise, yeah.
They've held 2 virtual events in the last 2 years, Global Black Pride. This is a new organization creating events around Black affirmation in the LGBTQ community. Those 2 events over the last 2 years drew worldwide virtually 7 and 10 million viewers. And our old pal Michael Ighodaro is the co-founder and president of Global Black Pride. So congratulations, Michael. We look forward to following developments there.
Okay.
And
no, go ahead.
France.
Oh, right. I forgot France.
So this is, we told you they were going to inter Josephine Baker in the Pantheon in Paris, the first Black woman to be interred, and a queer woman.
Well, they live in her in Monaco, actually, her remains.
Yes,
but they're putting a monument up, and that's Prime Minister or President Macron, excuse me. She was a legendary entertainer, and she worked in the French Resistance and was awarded during her lifetime the Croix de Guerre and the Legion d'Honneur for her service during the war.
And adopted like 150 children or something.
Right.
I exaggerate.
Right.
But yes, there's a symbolic empty coffin now in the Pantheon.
Right. That's true for some of the other people who are honored in the Pantheon.
Yeah.
But there's a big controversy over non-binary pronouns in France. The Le Petit Robert, which is one of the main dictionaries there, added IEL, yell, as merging il and l. And Brigitte Macron, the wife of the president, said there are two pronouns, he and she. Our language is beautiful, leave it alone. And the French education minister condemned this move, calling it an American wokeism. But the director general of the Robert said it's their job to observe the way the language evolves, but they're very uptight about this. And
well, everyone is at first. Check back in a few years and let's see how they go.
Oh, no.
Well, all right. AIDS news on World AIDS Day as we are taping. There is a new report from the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, looking at HIV infection over 10 years, 2010 to 2019. And what they've broken it down by race and age, among other things, and found that there is just a slight decrease in new HIV infections among white gay men, and no decrease in new infections among Black and Latinx gay men. Because they make less use of services, they have higher stigma. And essentially, what they are finding with all of this, that even though there is a decrease among the youngest cohort, there is an increase among men in their 20s and 30s. The epidemic has not changed. It's still there. There is no radical difference. We are not doing the education. We are not providing the services. We are not providing the treatment in enough comprehensive ways to make a real change. And all this talk about ending the epidemic is nonsense if we are not willing to make the commitment to really change things. Britain and Australia have seen significant decreases in new infections because they're very aggressive about getting people on PrEP. But this country, the United States, does not want to talk about sex, does not want to deal with gay, and does not want to deal with preventive medicine.
So, as with the beginning of the AIDS pandemic, people have to, and it's hard, stand up for themselves, demand what you should be allowed to get, and get it wherever you are.
So on this World AIDS Day, we ask the country to recommit to actually ending the AIDS epidemic.
Okay.
Although, there's, whatever. Let's move on. Entertainment news.
Well,
I'm sure we're all happy that Netflix is now airing Coming Out Colton, about Colton Underwood, former NFL player, former bachelor on The Bachelor.
Former stalker.
Exactly. 6 episodes, including cameos by Michael Sam, Gus Kenworthy, and Fran Drescher.
Well, Gus Kenworthy is his guide, and the Sex and the City sequel, Just Like That, bows on December 9th on HBO Max with all the women but Samantha, and with a featured role by our pal, Julie Halston.
And Cynthia Nixon, of course. Also now playing on Netflix, I haven't seen this yet, but I think I might have to watch it, Power of the Dog, the new Jane Campion movie with, what's his name, Cumberbatch, and Kirsten Dunst, which is a cowboy movie with a gay subtext.
Don't give it away.
I won't. That's all I'm going to say. But it's considered the next level Brokeback Mountain. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see.
All right. I got to see West Side Story in a screening. I actually saw the first public screening of it in the country. I was absolutely wrung out by this, partly because Stephen Sondheim had just died, and I was listening to the lyrics that he wrote when he was 26, and it made me think of that. But I think Spielberg has made a great film, and it's a superb cast, adding a lot of perspectives to the story and the characters without losing any of the original numbers. And some of them are done in totally new and inspired ways. Don't forget, this was a show created by Titanic gay artists in 1957. We're also Jewish, by the way. Leonard Bernstein did the music, Arthur Lawrence the book, Jerome Robbins the choreography, Sondheim the lyrics. There's some new choreography. There's some new book in this, but they pay homage to it. Rita Moreno, who won the Oscar for it back in 1961, also stars as Valentina, the proprietor of Doc's Soda Shop, and she was an executive producer and had a lot of sway over how this was done. They spared no expense, really creating a movie true to New York in the 1950s. Kudos to the entire cast.
But kudos to Tony Kushner,
yes,
who wrote this screenplay. Well, you left him out of your list.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He evidently deserves enormous credit for rethinking this, for doing enormous amounts of research. Rita Moreno was on The View today talking about how Spielberg and Kushner went to Puerto Rico and held public panels to get feedback from residents about how much they hated the original movie and its portrayal of Puerto Ricans.
The cast worked very hard on genuine accents and proper Puerto Rican slang of the day, that kind of stuff. That's important.
Well, Tony evidently really reimagined the whole thing and was the guiding force in how this was redone. So he and Spielberg together.
On my list. But again, Rachel Zegler as Maria, Ansel Elgort as Tony, Ariana DeBose as Anita, Mike Faced as Riff, David Alvarez as Bernardo, Brian Darcy James as Krupke. I mean, it's this is coming to us. It's a film about racial division, and it's coming to us at this time of horrible division in this country. It's very naive, of course, to think it might have some effect on people, but when you watch this film, it's a terrible tragedy, of course. You hope it will strike some chords in people.
Well, it's Romeo and Juliet, of course.
And it will be streaming eventually on HBO Max, but I recommend seeing it in a theater if you're not too afraid of Omicron.
And something else that I hope has an effect and has been having an effect is the series We're Here on HBO with the three drag queens, Shangela, Eureka, and Bob, who have been going around the country to small towns. We've now finished the series, 8 episodes. The last episode was in Grand Junction, Colorado. And again, very moving, very provocative in the way they approach the town and the people there. And all the characters they worked with, all the local people they worked with in this episode are trans. One of them disabled with cerebral palsy. And the whole series has been so moving and I hope impactful. So We're Here is well worth your time on HBO or HBO Max.
And I hope Amy Schneider wins on Jeopardy. Not the first trans contestant, but the first, or even the first trans winner, but she's the first trans person to qualify for the Tournament of Champions. She's averaging more than Ken Jennings did during his historic run of 74 wins, $38,000 a show. I mean, she was in a tough game on Tuesday night, let me tell you, but she really came through at the end.
She, as of Tuesday night, she had then won 10 shows in a row. Now we're taping on Wednesday. We've now become addicted to this. no telling what's going to happen to her from now on. Ken asked her about the pearls she was wearing on every episode. And she said, yes, they were given to me by my girlfriend, who said that she thought they would make me look pretty and make me look like a lady, I think. And so she's been wearing the pearls every episode. She also was asked about, what strange thing happened to you in high school. And she said, well, my classmates voted me most likely to appear on Jeopardy, which, of course, she has done.
All right. We told you.
She, of course, wore the trans pin on some episodes and did a little interview with the show saying that she wore it because she wanted to offer a symbol of hope to other trans people who had been rejected by their families, because she hadn't been.
And by the way, if you're wondering about my pin, it was tatted by women in South Africa who had HIV back in the 80s. I used to wear it on the show all the time. This is World AIDS. That's why I'm wearing it. Now, we told you that on The Simpsons, Mr. Smithers' love interest is Michael DeGroff. There he is on the right, a billionaire fashion mogul. But not that DeGroff is being voiced by Broadway film star Victor Garber. And he did a very revealing interview in The Advocate that we'll link to about his coming out process, caring for a roommate with AIDS early in the pandemic, losing work after playing Liberace in 1988, being in the original cast of Sweeney Todd and becoming a Sondheim fanatic, and how he first did the song Joanna from that show for Stephen Sondheim and made him cry.
Jesse Smollett is now on trial in Chicago on the 3 years after the incident charges of disorderly conduct for lying to the cops. The story of his supposed attackers is pretty believable. They have a check from him. They're
now saying that they think he did get a genuine threatening note, and he thinks that the producers didn't take it seriously. So this was a way of them trying to him trying to get them to take this stuff seriously. And of course, it's the wrong way to do it. If
he still denies all that and says, no, this is they're just making this up, and he really was attacked. We, of course, weren't there and don't know, but the trial is going to take a few more days at least, and we'll let you know what happens.
Hey, we're running out of time, but Gay USA could use a tune-up of its website. If you know some young, hungry person who would like to make a name for himself, herself, or their self, get in contact with us. Go to our website, and you can do that.
You'll find contact info. I also want to note that if you're looking for raunchy as hell Christmas movies, go to VH1, where RuPaul and a lot of drag queens are doing Christmas.
And there's a ton of holiday gay films. We're going to link to that in our email as well. Netflix has Single All the Way on December 2nd.
Yeah, I'm just telling them where to find the more fun ones.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm looking forward to the Great British Baking Show, which has a lot of gay content.
And you can see the Ballet Trocadero de Monte Carlo returning to the Joyce Theater December 14th through January 2nd. That's it for us. We will see you next week. Thank you for tuning in. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.